And I think that we can finally move on to the moment we've all been waiting for. D&D horror stories from the DM's lens. We can cherry pick which ones that we are most, the ones that stick with us the most, so to speak. It could be a problem player, a problem situation, real life getting in the way of
You mean a train wreck, right?
Yes.
Sometimes, yes.
I have been very lucky. I mean, again, I am, the newest person in this panel to D&D, and I've been very lucky that the people I've played with, I found them all online, so it was very much like it could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
And they've all been wonderful. I've had exactly like one incident where it was not even an in-character thing, but just like an out-of-character comment kept making a joke as like a rapier sword came up, like just making those sexual assault jokes. Exactly. And that was all the only thing. I was like, we kind of just all like chuckled the first time, but then after it kept happening, I had to go to my DM and be like, look, great player. I know he's capable of better humor than this. Would you mind just putting a stop to that? And like it did, and it hasn't happened since. So like that is literally the only thing I've really had to deal with. And I feel so lucky and blessed to have that happen, because I have heard some very deep horror stories and train wrecks can happen in campaigns, especially in person when things get even more tense and there's not that barrier of the internet, I guess, to step back from.
Mm-hmm.
I have such a collection of disasters. I don't even know what to pick. Literally, I just thought, oh, what should I tell? And then I remembered like 7 different stories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that none of mine are quite so unfortunate as that. I think there's been some times where there's been such poor communication between my players that entire characters were abandoned in the elemental plane of water.
Oh, no.
Just questionable lapses in judgment where a character just decided, I have very important context about your character's brother's current whereabouts, insofar as that he wants to like return you to your militaristic parents and to their authoritarian unfair governmental regime. And the character was justifiably damaged by her awful upbringing and decided that, no, I'm not interested in keeping any social tabs with you, and decided to cast the gate spell to bring everyone but that one character back from the elemental plane of water.
Oof. Folkard, I knew you were chomping at the bit there with all your 7 stories.
So first of all,
you could roll a dice, you could roll a d8.
Yeah, see which one comes up.
Wait a second, I'll come up with a table. So first of all, I'd like to advertise my Cringe D&D Moments video on my channel, because I tell 5 stories other than these 7 there. When I got drunk running a game where I forgot to come up with an epilogue for a Tyranny of Dragons campaign, and the ending was sad. It was just sad, and I cringed really hard. But I don't know. I think that regarding to story and like running off the rails, I don't think I have those kind of moments that were that bad. Like nobody broke the game. The most cringe and disastrous moments were like between like chemistry around the table, people getting mad at other people. I don't even know what's the cringiest one.
Well, if you want, I can tell my catapult story while you think.
Yeah, sure.
Oh boy. So for those of you that know me personally, you know the legend of the catapult story. We had 2 players in the very early stages of my DMing career during the Lost Mine of Phandelver in the Red Brand hideout. And
I already think I see where this is going, but
these 2 players had played part of the module before. They are best friends. They have their own Discord server. And though we're still friends, they had joined together as a pair, and during the exploration of the Red Brand hideout, they were kind of giggling to themselves the whole time, in DMs with each other the whole time, keeping, their own separate conversation. Fine, so far so good. And it got to the point where they were approaching the central cavern, spoilers here for Lost Mine of Phandelver, where the Nothic lives. And they had gotten the jump on the Nothic, who was kind of skulking around in the cavern. And they were continuing to kind of whisper and giggle to each other. And when combat broke out, and it got to the two of them, the druid said, I polymorph. Or before the combat had started, they'd polymorphed into a mouse. And they had vocalized running over to the sorcerer and climbing into the sorcerer's pocket. So the sorcerer was walking into the battle with the mouse kind of in the pocket and to go on the shoulder, and was carrying around a polymorphed Loxodon in the form of a mouse. And when combat finally started and it got to their turn, sorcerer's turn, sorcerer said, I take the mouse out of my pockets and into my hand, and the little bits of magic start to form in my fingertips, and I take the mouse and launch the mouse at the Nothic with the catapult spell. And the druid said, as soon as I zip past the Nothic, I will transform back into the Loxodon, dealing nuclear damage. And I said, no. And they were like, what? I said, roll. I said, well, first of all, roll. And I'm going to make some rolls. So with catapults, the target has to make I believe it's a dexterity saving throw. The Nothic succeeded on the dexterity saving throw, which means that the object continues to travel until it hits a solid surface, and then gets dealt the bludgeoning damage equal to the distance. So what I had found out afterwards, well, what happened was the Nothic dodged, the mouse kept traveling, but the druid stopped the game and said, no, I polymorph back because I can polymorph at will. And I said, no. Do you know why? Because A, that's not how catapult works, and B, you didn't talk to me about any of this and sprung it on me as a surprise, as like a cool thing to do behind the DM's back, and to try and impress everyone else at the table. And I had no idea. And they were like, come on, rule of cool, let me polymorph. And I said, it's not even your turn. And they're like, yeah, but I can drop polymorph at will, and I should still be able to deal damage when the Loxodon appears over the Nothic. And I was like, no, you continue as a mouse until you hit the wall, you take bludgeoning damage, and that's that. That was their last session, because they had said to me, we designed our whole characters around this catapult bit. We designed our whole character shtick. Both of our characters were built around the ability to launch the Loxodon catapult. And if you're not going to let us have the Loxodon catapult, we don't want to play in the game.
Now, see, there's that give and take of flexibility with the DM and then with players who design their characters around a particular bit without communicating anything.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my famous catapult story.
Oh.
If they had just approached you about this with just like, okay, our characters have this like wombo combo 1-2 punch thing. It's kind of dumb, but this is what we want to do. Is it cool? You'd have been fine. I would have been fine.
Right.
The fact they just went into that encounter with the assumption of, oh, we're going to do this thing and it's going to be amazing and we're going to win D&D.
Yeah.
No, that's not acceptable. Yeah. That's not okay. I would allow it, but I would give them a very stern talking to after the session. Yeah, that's not.
Well, the thing about
way to do things.
Well, the thing about that was that the Nothic succeeded on the dexterity saving throw.
Yeah, which is totally reasonable. Of like them expecting, oh, I can get out of it. Yeah, no. deal with the consequences. You didn't assume it was just going to work off the bat right away.
Yeah. But
Right.
yeah, the Loxodon, I think what really burned them up was that I had the Loxodon take bludgeoning damage from hitting the wall.
Yeah,
Well, of course they would.
That really burned them up.
but
I
that
had a
was a
player.
consequence of that spell. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
I mean, talk about session 0.
Yeah.
Most of my disaster stories were when I was a younger DM,
Mhm.
and I never ran a session 0, and I had less experience. I had less friends to play with. I was kind of less social back then. Right now, I can just approach a person on the street and say,
Mhm.
"You want to play D&D?"
Yeah.
I mean, I just several months ago, I made a now my best friend just by I seen her like once, and I said, "You want to play Dungeons and Dragons? Like, you ever heard of it?" "Oh, yeah, I heard of it. I want to try." And now we hang out all the time and we play. So yeah, D&D connecting people.
D&D definitely
But
brings people together.
Mm-hmm.
really, and that was back in the day when I had like incompatible players around the table.
That's the
Players that
worst.
have extremely different expectations, and that leads to a disaster, and even different expectation with me, because I go ahead once I decided to gather a party at work at the office, and I mean those were random people, and I again told them I want to play. And I felt that something was creeping into the party when the one guy named his character after one politician,
Oh.
like a meme-worthy politician here in Ukraine. I don't know the equivalence in the US. Equivalent. You have this guy who makes like Instagram videos and he yells at people. I forgot his name.
Ben Shapiro.
Whatever. Oh, that's no. I meant another one, but yeah, that one is nice too. But anyway, yeah, and it was such a well. Can you imagine a character named Ben Shapiro in a game? Well, that's kind of how it sounded. And he was kind of like a creepy, rapey vibe type of person,
That's the worst.
and I mean, I facepalmed all the time, and it as he grew more comfortable within the party, the more like his personality unfolded. And he made a sex anal joke every single time. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's what he
It's not
did
your fault. It's not your
all
fault.
the time. Like he shot people in like the asshole. Like he was an archer. We played the Lost Mine of Endelver with the pre-gen characters, and he picked the fighter archer, and he yeah, that's how he finished people by shooting at their assholes
I'm
with
getting
an arrow.
PTSD
And
flashbacks of Kakashi cosplayers at the anime cons that I go to.
I was just thinking about Dimension 20 is like a fantasy high when I don't know if you guys watched that one when they're fighting
Bits
like
of it, yeah.
the corn glob
corn
thing.
creatures, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was just like, come on, we can't we
Oh,
come
no.
up with like a different like level of humor. Come on.
yeah, that was the level of humor, and he was the one guy. Then another girl was she actually as the way she started her character, I really liked that. She played a really fat elf, like an enormously obese elf. Like she found a even an art of an obese elf on the internet, and I thought it was funny. I don't know, because elves are super glamorous and neat all the time, and she was like a plus size woman. But again, she started okay, but then she started to become edgy, and she kind of she was rude to all the NPCs, and the guy, Silver Hole Winter, invited her to join the Lord's Alliance, and she's like, "Am I gonna get paid or something? Like, why even I need this?" And she threw the cloak into his face, And I was like, okay. And then the other guy who the pre-gen character said that he was a brother of one of the NPCs, and when that brother was in danger, he was taken hostage, and he's been put a knife to his throat. And the guy says like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. And his brother got killed. So I mean, I'm sitting there and everything's falling apart, and I'm just listening to this, and it reached an apogee when they captured Hammond Cost, who in Lost Mine of Endeavor is a necromancer, and they didn't even ask him anything. They just assumed he was evil. Well, I mean, he is, I guess, but he's not like maniac. And they just they knocked him down, and they sort of taken him hostage, and they started like interrogating him, and they cut his hand off. And while doing so, the fighter guy, the big or barbarian, he was a fighter. He found a monologue of the guys, this Samuel Jackson from the Tarantino's
Pulp
movie,
Fiction.
Pulp
Yeah.
Fiction.
yeah. Some you probably guys know what
I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and he read it out loud and then he killed the guy. And I'm sitting there, like prior to that, he downed 2 bottles of beers, and I was like, yeah, okay, thank you for that theatrical installment. We will never continue this game again, and we never did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
And that was because there were new players, and I didn't explain stuff to them. So if I had a session 0
Mhm.
and I asked them, okay guys, can you be serious? Maybe some of them said no, I can't, bye, and that would be fine. But that's what it ended up being, and I felt dirty. and we actually played for a couple of sessions, like 3 or 4 sessions, because I kind of had fun. I practiced running this adventure. I memorized stuff so that when I ran it again, it was almost perfect. So yeah, that was practice, but it was painful. And I have a lot more stories like that with people like that. And it's special. It's even, I guess it's even worse when half of the people are like, they know what they're doing, they know me, and other half are clueless. They treat the game like they metagame as hell. They just one guy tries to sell something to an NPC and fails. The other guy says, "Now I'm gonna do it," while he is in the different part of the town. That was how I started running Princess of the Apocalypse. I had, plans for this campaign, as I always do. Like I really think really hard, trying to make it a compelling story, and people are playing like that. And this new guy, he picked Eryn Spencer, and I had like I was constantly forgetting that he's an Eryn Spencer, because this is an exotic guy. He doesn't just show up in a village. And I constantly forgot about that, because he never role played, nothing like that. So I was constantly being upset, and my wife kind of always comforted me, like, yeah, it's okay. And I'm like, no, my game just goes to shit. And then I said, okay, I'm gonna tweak my expectations, and I just made them. I designed a little side quest for them. Okay, guys, these dwarves ask you to beat the monsters in the mine that they're working at. And they go there, and they delve deeper and deeper. There was some red herring stuff going on, and then the portal shows up, and they're surrounded by a lot of demons, and the only way to escape it is to get into this portal, and they end up in the abyss. And I'm like, now you're going through abyss, motherfuckers.
Speaking of good segues, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, how can I benefit from this situation? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I run combat. Like my combat is a little bit boring. Well, I'm gonna use these guys to practice combat. So I've designed like layers of just mega dungeon uh, for them to just massacre through, and
Mhm.
combat after combat, trying out different tactics and interesting monsters. Uh, but the first boss that I've designed, I was talking, I think, before we started recording about loving, boss fights and
Mm-hmm.
phases. And I played World of Warcraft for like 10 years.
Ooh,
Uh,
same. Yeah, that's a dangerous pipeline.
yeah, and I like the boss fights there, and I want to bring them into D&D and find the balance between gaming stuff and roleplay stuff. It works really
Mm-hmm.
really good for me. And I that was one of the first guys that I created. I put so much effort into it. I uploaded it on D&D Beyond, and he was such a flavorful guy, kind of Dark Souls type of stuff. He was wearing two shields, and he had phases when he covers with them.
Nice.
And I used Dungeon Master's Guide monster creation tool to figure out his challenge rating. And you know what? It's bullshit. Because I
Challenge
thought,
rating is bullshit in general.
yeah, totally. And I thought that he was too hard for them because I made his AC like 25 or something.
Oof.
Uh, because I mean, he was, I guess, 20, but when he covered with shields, he was almost 30 or something. And you know what? They beat him in like 2 rounds. I'm like, what
What?
the hell? I've been working on this guy for weeks. You've beaten him in two. He had phases when he covers, and then the little demons like show up from the puddles of goo, and the puddle forms into like tentacles that grab them, and if they don't kind of if they don't shoot them down while they approach them, they will explode. I had so many cool mechanics, and I was just, oh my god, he's 25 AC. You're third level. They were third level, and they were like 26, 27. I'm like, they were critting constantly. And I'm like, oh, okay, this goes well.
Nothing
So,
survives first contact with a party. Not our
yeah.
monsters, not our plans.
So the
Yeah.
one disastrous story kind of morphed into a slightly different nature of a disastrous story, but yeah, eventually it turned out really well. I'm thinking for quite a while now to write that down and release it on Patreon or something, because I came up with like Lovecraftian type of dungeons with some multi-dimensional
Yeah.
shenanigans going on, psychic damage because you witness a 4-dimensional object, stuff like that.
Very cool.
But that's a
Really
different
cool.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing your horror stories. And as we wrap up the DM Roundtable, I just want to ask everyone a very simple question.